미국이 돈이 어디 없을까요? 그런데 지금 미국이 진짜 답답해하는 건 돈으로 안 되는 영역이 있다는 겁니다. 설계도는 다 그려놨는데 정작 그걸 실제 물건으로 만들어낼 현장 능력이 사라진 거죠. 그래서 지금 미국은 자기들이 잃어버린 만드는 법을 가장 잘하는 나라를 다급하게 찾고 있습니다.
Critical minerals, lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements, and others are the building blocks of modern technology, powering electric vehicles, microchips, and advanced defense systems. Global demand for these minerals is surging, with lithium demand alone growing nearly 30% annually from 2021 to 2024, driven by rising electric vehicle battery production. Yet, the People's Republic of China, or PRC, controls 92% of global rare earth element processing and dominates the manufacturing of battery and magnet components. This chokehold, reinforced by China's tens of billions in global mining investments and tactics like price manipulation and export restrictions, poses a direct threat to the United States and our allies. While the U.S. possesses significant mineral resources, domestic production alone cannot meet the speed or scale of this demand. The U.S. manufacturing, their operation costs increase significant in the region, increasing the regional bureau. It will take decades to permit a natural mining in America. Moreover, the federal government lacks the financial capacity to fully subsidize the level of investment needed to drive large-scale private sector investment expansion of domestic production. Relying solely on domestic solutions is insufficient, therefore, so we need a bold global strategy to secure resilient, diversified supply chains free from Chinese control. The current geopolitical landscape offers an opportune window to act. The recent developments, such as President Trump's critical minerals agreement with Ukraine and the U.S. facilitated peace deal in the Democratic Republic of Congo, open new opportunities to access vital resources. We've also seen coordination like the recently announced Quad Critical Minerals Initiative underscore the importance of critical minerals to broader
방금 보신 것처럼 미국은 지금 중국이 준 광물 자원 때문에 비상이 걸렸습니다. 자기들 땅에도 자원은 있지만 그걸 빠르게 뽑아내서 쓸 수 있게 만드는 시스템이 망가진 상태거든요.
Creating and building a diversified, resilient, secure critical mineral supply chain is crucial to our national security. That's why landmark legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act, in which Senator Manchin played a key role, led to historic investments to support domestic critical mineral supply chains and started to diversify us away from foreign entities of concern. Unfortunately, in the Big Beautiful Bill, some of these demand incentives with regards to electric vehicles, battery manufacturing, et cetera, potentially are going to be undermined. And that's something that, certainly as we look at implementation of this bill, I think we ought to correct to continue to build those demand signals. Also, while domestic production of critical minerals is crucial for the United States' security, we can't do it alone if we want to shift away from reliance with China. That's why our subcommittee is going to play an important role to make sure the State Department, the Development Finance Corporation, and other national security agencies have the tools they need to build resilient global supply chains. I've, in the prior administration, worked closely with the State Department, worked closely with Undersecretary Fernandez to build those strong international partnerships on supply chain resilience, both bilaterally and through multilateral initiatives, including the Minerals Security Partnership. The MSP brings together 14 partner countries, including Australia, India, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom, as well as the European Union, to strengthen critical mineral supply chains. The MSP Finance Network convenes development finance institutions like the DFC and its equivalents in the MSP partner nations to leverage private sector investment for critical mineral projects, focusing on minerals that are most relevant for advanced technologies, defense, energy, and industrial processes. It's a positive sign that our ally, South Korea, has now succeeded the United States as chair of the MSP. That said, we've got to continue to work with the State Department and continue its robust leadership in the MSP.
결국 혼자서는 답이 안 나오니까 믿을 만한 파트너들을 모으기 시작한 겁니다. 이제 미국은 협력을 넘어 한국 같은 나라의 구체적인 역할까지 기대하고 있다는 거예요.
In 2010, China put rare earth export controls on Japan, following a territorial dispute over islands they claimed ownership of, which should really sound familiar to all of us. From that moment, through the Energy Act of 2020, which created the critical minerals list itself, through my last day in the Senate, I focused on this issue. And while there has been good legislation, there remains much more to be done. If I could leave you with one thing today, it's to impress the urgent need for us and our allies to have strong, reliable, critical mineral supply chains across the three phases: extraction, processing, and manufacturing, so that no part of the process is in the hands of an adversary. The solution includes the use of our financing tools, like the Development Finance Corporation, the Defense Production Act, and the Export-Import Bank. We need to reauthorize and strengthen these key financial tools so that we have a full toolbox. And given the committee's focus, we must keep in mind that none of this works without diplomatic engagement. The Senate Department must focus on energy security with experts who understand the complexity of resource economics and energy geopolitics, with emphasis to prioritize the issue in country. Finally, we need to make sure that this effort is coordinated so that efforts across so many agencies are effective and don't work at cross purposes or waste investments. Here's why this matters now more than ever. Just like Putin weaponized Russia's oil and gas resources to try to scare off Europe from supporting Ukraine, Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party are more than willing to use critical minerals as leverage to put Americans and the free world at risk. They have ramped that up in earnest recently by flooding the market with oversupply, driving prices down, and leaving producers worldwide unable to compete, and then using export controls once they dominate the market. In fact, at the end of 2023, I held a hearing in the wake of the first round of China's export restrictions on gallium and germanium, two critical minerals that are needed for semiconductor fabrication. As I feared that export restrictions became a ban in the late 2024, with recent trade disputes, they have gone even further by cutting off our supplies of rare earths, antimony, tungsten, and more. That is why tariffs are so important. Tariffs are needed to protect the building blocks of our economy and national security, as well as those of our allies, from China's market distortions and economic malfeasance. That is what tariffs are for, to protect strategic industries by penalizing bad actors and keeping the U.S. prices competitive. Even worse than Europe's addiction to Russian gas, which is about 45% of supply in 2021.
실제로 중국이 자원을 무기 삼아 수출을 막아버리면 첨단 산업 전체가 멈출 수 있습니다. 미국이 이 문제를 뼈저리게 느끼면서 동맹국들에게 같이 움직이자고 손을 내미는 상황인 거죠.
We were able to secure 25% of the world's global supply through our allies and partners. We've also seen the PRC use predatory pricing. That's what a monopolist does. It uses its power in order to drive down the competition. So what have they done? They have flooded the market. The price of cobalt, the price of lithium has gone down 75–80%. The price of cobalt today is lower than the price in 2017. That is part of the strategy. But there's a bright side. There's a bright side, and that is that we are pushing an open door. When we started working on the Mineral Security Partnership and I went to our allies and partners, they shared the same concerns. They actually were looking to do something about their diversification of critical minerals. They saw the same need, and when we proposed the MSP concept, they bought it immediately. They wanted U.S. leadership. That's our partners and allies. Producing countries want our investments. We don't bribe. We follow the law.
미국이 리더십을 발휘하겠다고 하지만 사실 가장 필요한 건 실제 투자와 실행력입니다. 그래서 각국이 가진 돈과 기술을 어떻게 엮을지가 관건이 됐습니다.
In my testimony that I hope we can discuss today, I think we're going to need more funding. If you look at what France, Germany, Australia, Japan, Korea, and others have done, all of those have billion-dollar investment funds in order to de-risk and do early-stage investing. I've also proposed that we not ignore recycling. And lastly, that we create an emergency response team in order to address the continued weaponization by the PRC. But again, I very much welcome your proposed bill, and I hope we can discuss it later this morning. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you to all of our witnesses for your wonderful opening statements. And we'll go into member questioning, and I recognize
여기서 아주 중요한 포인트가 나옵니다. 자원이 많다고 다 끝나는 게 아니거든요. 가져온 광물을 진짜 쓸 수 있는 상태로 만드는 정제라는 과정이 핵심인데
supply. So let me ask this question to Senator Manchin. Why does China's chokehold on critical minerals threaten the U.S. economic competitiveness and national security? And if you can talk about to what extent can domestic production reduce this dependence, and why is international engagement still essential?
When you look at what we're dealing with and look in history, 20th century, beginning of the 20th century, the United States became a powerhouse because of our energy. Back then it was relied upon on coal, made the steel, we did an awful lot of things, and we basically pulled ourselves out of poverty, became an industrial leader. That was necessary for us to have reliable, dependable, affordable energy. Today, critical minerals is the same as that energy was needed back in the 20th century. So in the 21st century, the new boom is going to be basically critical minerals. Well, everything that we do depends on these superconductors and the magnets and all the different things and special alloys and steels that we use. Those are building blocks where I think that we made a mistake, that we should have trade agreements and we should have basically penalties with tariffs in order to protect our building blocks. That's it. Everything else should be used as an incentive to do trade. But protecting basically our allies and countries across the world that we can rely on. And we have a chain of allies that we can depend on. You have Canada, tremendous cachet of rare earth minerals. Australia, tremendous cachet. United States, possibility of a tremendous cachet we weren't allowed to mine and process. And then you have Japan and South Korea able to do refining. We have a building block right there that we could start and get in the game very quickly. You got to let the private sector in. We can't take this debt on, continue to take all these debts on and the risk. Those are the things. And what happens, if you let China control that, it'll be no different than what Putin.
미국이 한국과 일본을 콕 집어 말한 이유가 여기 있습니다. 흙더미에서 쓸모있는 금속을 발라내는 그 까다로운 공정을 실제로 돌릴 수 있는 능력을 우리가 가졌기 때문입니다.
You can't ask other countries to do what you won't do for yourself. If we have a cache of rare earth minerals, we should be able to mine them, we should be able to process, and we should be able to manufacture. And working with our allies around the world, we should do the same. You got to form a block, really, and basically a national defense authorization for the defense of our country. And this is what is at stake right now. Can we defend ourselves? Can we have the defense we need? Do we have the critical minerals for that, computers and chips? Do we have it for our economic growth? Compete in AI? All the things we're competing with right now. It's a race, basically, who's going to lead the 21st century and beyond. And the United States has been a leader. It's basically leadership's looked upon from the free world, and whether we survive or not. So with that, I think it's critical to use what you have now, but the big elephant in the room right now is national defense authorization. It allows you to bypass an awful lot of this and determination that we've got to have this done as quickly as possible, and it could be.
Great. And Undersecretary Fernandez, if my colleague from California, Dr. Ruiz, was here, he's bent my ear a lot on Lithium Valley, the Salton Sea, and the possibilities there, thinking about just the vast supplies of lithium potentially there, and doing it in an economically responsible way.
결국 이건 경제 문제만은 아니고 누가 살아남느냐는 안보 전쟁으로 바뀌었습니다. 중국이 공급망을 쥐고 흔드는 방식이 너무 노골적이라 더 이상 가만히 있을 수 없게 된 거죠.
And also the challenge that we face with China and their control over key parts of the supply chain. So thank you all for being here. My first question is, how is China currently leveraging its control over the supply chain against us and our allies? Is it mostly focused on economic control, or is there also a national security element that they are laying a trap for us? And I'll go to any of the panelists who want to start.
Well, I mean, they started a long time ago. This is back in the 90s when they saw something that they thought they could control and get involved with. And they're doing the jobs that nobody else wanted to do. The refining they do is basically extremely harmful to the environment to a certain extent that we wouldn't accept that at all. With that being said, they don't have anybody to answer to. You know, their form of government basically allows them to do as they wish. And they've been able to basically capture a market that says, listen, you send all your product to us, they go over and do the mining, send their people over to do the mining, send it back to China to do the processing, refining. No one else is willing to do it. And there is ways to do that. You know, there's technology that can do it much cleaner, much more safer for the environment and for the workers. But they dominated that market and had a 20-year start on all of us. So how do you get that? You can't say, well, we can't sit back and just accept what it is. We can get into the game very quickly. I think the President, Trump is in Pennsylvania today, in your beautiful state, right next door to my state. And hopefully energy is going to be the topic of what they talk about today. And I think you're going to find some private sector willing to jump into the market now to accelerate that with the help of the government.
Mr. Fernandez?
Congressman, they're using it right now with 7 heavy rare earth materials. It's being used as we speak. But it's more than that. It's not just the exercise of that dominance, it's the threat of that dominance. There are many countries out there that will tell you, we do not want to do certain things because the PRC will retaliate. And so just that threat sometimes is enough to change behavior among our allies and partners. So it's got to go beyond the actual public bans, export bans, and export restrictions.
Mr. Fannin?
중국은 일부러 가격을 떨어뜨려 다른 나라 공장들을 다 죽여놓고 나중에는 자기들 마음대로 수출을 끊어버립니다. 미국은 이제야 이 무서운 패턴을 깨달은 셈입니다.
Or even if we try, it's going to be such a small amount. We're going to have to depend on allies to do that. And even if we can find the rare earth, we don't have the experience to manufacture it. I mean, the Chinese, it's literally a closely guarded secret. They got specific people with the specific techniques that's been passed down through generations of people, and they are not letting those people leave to go other places to show you how you refine this stuff. How do we explain this to the American people?
Yeah, I think I guess it's really a political question, because I think you're asking, Congressman, is how do you get the American people to buy in so that they are able to, because it's going to cost more eventually, to do things in a way that, as we discussed, does not offend human rights.
But that's exactly right. I mean, like, look, the White House, I've seen them working on this. But they got to work on the communications piece of this, to look the American people in the face and say, you want to know why the cost of military weapons are going up? Here is why we have to spend more money. You want to know why we're doing these tariffs with China? Here is why. Mr. Fernandez, I want to give you a chance before I run out of time.
Look, I think we need a little bit of humility. It took us a long time to dig this hole, and we are in a hole. I think you take some examples. 2 years ago, the PRC imposed restrictions on germanium. I'd never heard of germanium, but it turns out germanium is needed for semiconductors. At that point, we had a problem. We literally spoke to 100 countries and said, do you have any extra germanium you can sell to the world? We actually found some through the MSP. 25% of the world's supply we were able to add. It was just hanging around a country that we'd never heard of. And so I think you've got to go example by example and do the same thing we did during COVID, which is, we have a problem that we didn't have active ingredients in that supply chain, as you know. But you've got to take a couple of examples and say, we've got a problem. And it took us a while to get here. It'll take us a while to dig out of this hole.
The gentleman's time's up. Great question, great answers. I wish we just had more time.
문제는 미국이 정제나 제조 경험이 거의 없다는 겁니다. 기술을 꽁꽁 숨긴 중국을 대신해서 이 공백을 메워줄 누군가가 절실하게 필요한 상황이죠.
But it's important to break this down for the American people. It's critical because of the semiconductor, telecommunication, defense, and renewable energy industries. People around the country need to know this critical impact. Thankfully, President Biden understood the importance of securing our critical mineral supply chains. Under his leadership, the State Department worked with the Development Finance Corporation and our allies to ensure that American businesses were shielded from the CCP's market pressures. In 2022, we established the Mineral Security Partnership, the State Department program that was dedicated to accelerating the development of diverse critical mineral supply chains free from China's control. But we have a challenge at hand because the Trump administration has gone forward with reductions in force that can have an impact that undermines all of these efforts, this awareness that we do have in a bipartisan way to have access to critical minerals. And we saw just last Friday, the State Department lose through their reduction in force and firing of 1,300 employees as a part of a plan to shrink that workforce in a way that is not thoughtful. And instead of working to secure our critical mineral supply chains, Trump is firing experts and causing those remaining to be distracted by fear for their jobs instead of focusing on American interests. And it is a real distraction. So, Undersecretary Fernandez, I'd love to hear from you how these reductions in force harm states' work with other federal agencies like the DFC to help American businesses secure our supply chains, and what should we be doing to work with DFC to
내부적인 혼란이 있더라도 미국이 결국 가야 할 길은 명확합니다. 자원을 가진 나라와 그걸 다듬을 줄 아는 나라를 하나로 묶는 것뿐입니다.
That's why countries want to
We
invest.
certainly have capital. Much of it we bring in from China. And I'm going to yield back 10 seconds.
If I can just say one thing to you.
Yes, go
as far
ahead,
as
sir.
you have United States, you have Canada, and you have Australia. Three main caches of where we know we have critical minerals we all need. Then you have the ability of Japan to do the refining. And South Korea is coming on strong too. So these are all allies of ours in the free world. It's something we should be building an alliance with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Rep. Barra.
I just ask a quick follow-up question.
우리나라는 자원이 없어서 늘 불안해했지만 사실 그 덕분에 가져온 재료를 어떻게든 쓸모있게 만드는 가공 능력을 극한으로 키워왔습니다. 미국이 지금 우리에게 기대하는 것도 바로 그 지독한 정제 기술과 제조 시스템입니다. 아무것도 없던 나라가 살아남으려 애썼던 그 시간이 이제는 미국이 가장 필요로 하는 무기가 된 셈입니다. 오늘 영상은 여기까지입니다. 시청해주셔서 감사합니다.